Hey folks, Zach Osterman here, you Insider Indianapolis Star, talking to you about Rutgers 66, Indiana 57. Obviously not in Piscataway tonight. Weather got in my way. They're having some really bad flooding, some really bad storms out there, and just kind of made travel not practical, unfortunately, today. But obviously still tuned into Mike Woodson's post-game press conference, still watch the game. Just a really poor performance, I think, from Indiana in probably the areas, if you told Mike Woodson, you can lose this game maybe on the back of just not shooting the ball particularly well, which Indiana didn't. They were under 40% from the floor and 7 of 26 from the three-point line. He probably could have lived with some of that. But I think if you'd said you're going to be minus 11 in offensive rebounds, minus 11 in second chance points, you're going to be 4 of 15 from the free throw line, you're going to commit 18 turnovers, your starting point guard's going to get thrown out of the game on a flagrant 2, I think you would have said that's exactly the sort of performance we can't afford. Because it felt after Ohio State like Indiana maybe was beginning to build something, even through the ugliness of Nebraska. You could kind of take those last few games around the new year of a piece and move them forward. And it seemed like Indiana was getting a sense of itself. And then it came into Rutgers, a Rutgers team that's very good defensively, but frankly awful at the other end of the floor. They had not won a Big Ten game yet. They were 0-3. In conference play. They'd struggled just before the new year to beat Stonehill, which is a team in the 350s in Ken Palm. And, it was just kind of the sort of game where if Indiana could just limit its mistakes, and listen, Rutgers forces some of those mistakes. That's part of the difficulty of playing Steve Pikiell's Rutgers. But if Indiana could just limit those mistakes that Mike Woodson has harped on so much, then you felt like Indiana had a chance. And I think there was something Woodson said in his postgame radio show. He said that Indiana essentially said, in his words, were the things we said we weren't going to do. And it just sort of felt like a performance that flew in the face of everything, that everything Indiana did to prepare itself for this, if that makes sense. 3 players in double figures, Mackenzie Mbako, Malik Renew, and Kel'el Ware, each with 13. But again, Xavier Johnson only plays 23 minutes before he's ejected, 2 points, 2 assists, 5 turnovers. The free throw shooting number was glaring. It's a much more competitive game, given that I don't think Rutgers scored, or at least didn't make a field goal in its last 4 minutes and 40 seconds of the game. If that's an even competitive free throw number, deep into the game there, maybe 11 of 15, 12 of 15, this game is right there in the balance. You can live with some of the poor shooting. I thought Indiana struggled with Rutgers zone at times, but that's bound to happen. And the 3-point number was a little bit inflated because Indiana was kind of firing them up late in the game, trying to come back. But again, it's so many of the things that this team can't quite seem to figure out, struggling to protect the offensive glass, particularly on long caroms. Rutgers shot 22 threes. Again, Rutgers is not a high volume 3-point shooting team, just like Indiana. But again, like some of the teams that we saw in the non-conference, I think they were willing to take a few more of them in this game because they relied on they trusted themselves to grab some of those long caroms, some of those long rebounds. The second chance points number is, more than the final deficit. Indiana even kind of made its paint points advantage work in this game, finished +8 in paint points, and that still wasn't enough. In the wider sense, Mike Woodson really kind of called down 3 of his seniors. And it was interesting because he said Xavier Johnson, Anthony Walker, Trey Galloway. I need more from them. Those guys are seniors. And then he said Anthony Leal, and he said no complaints with Anthony Leal. He's doing fine for me. Essentially, those weren't his exact words, but he said no complaints there. But then he went back to the other 3, and he said those 3 guys are seniors, and they've got to help lead. And it was sort of a reminder. It's not the most fashionable thing to remind people. This made my insider. I'm looking up at the monitor above my computer. It's not the most fashionable thing to remind people this is a young team, but it is. Ken Palm has this team at 1.67 years of Division I experience per player. That's 221st nationally. For the sake of comparison, last year Indiana was at 2.51 years of Division I experience per player. That was 67th nationally. So this is a young team. It just is. And even more than that, it is a team that is young in its time together. Too many of these guys have not played a lot of minutes together. Indiana only returned 2 starters from last season. And the only reason it returned 2 is because one went out with a season-ending injury, and that opened the door for the other one to replace him. Obviously, Xavier Johnson and Trey Galloway. Indiana starts a freshman, 2 sophomores. One of those is a transfer. This is a young team, and it needs more than just its head coach. It needs the steadying presence. It needs the veteran leadership. It needs, it needs seniors and veterans that are the ones that are kind of leading, not just with words, but also by example in terms of the way they limit mistakes, the way they, they're more careful, they're sharper, they're more focused, maybe when they're on the road as opposed to at home or in clutch situations later, whatever it might be. And it's clear Mike Woodson feels like he's just not getting that from these guys right now. And collectively, those guys did struggle. Obviously, again, Xavier Johnson was ejected, but between the 3 of them, or the 4 of them, if you want to bring all 4 of those guys, again, Walker, Johnson, Leal, and Galloway together, they combined for 10.6 rebounds, 8 assists, and 9 turnovers in 66 total minutes on Tuesday. So, it's Indiana is still sort of clawing toward something more competitive and something more consistent. And I think Mike Woodson hoped that Tuesday night might be an opportunity to build on that after the, what was an impressive win over Ohio State in the weekend. Wound up getting away from the Hoosiers and not proving that it's Indiana's 5th straight loss in Piscataway. So Hoosiers are 11-5 now. They're 3-2 in Big Ten play. They've got Minnesota at home on Friday and then Purdue the following Tuesday at Assembly Hall as well. Until then, for the Indianapolis Star, we'll have a podcast probably tomorrow, either tomorrow or Thursday. Mike Knott and Isaac and I will get together on that. And we'll have the Friday rundown as well, leading into that Minnesota game Friday night. So between now and then, for the Indianapolis Star, I'm Zach Osterman, IndyStar.com/sports. For everything you need from this game, for everything you need going forward, talking points on Thursday, hit subscribe to the YouTube channel for the rest of our content this week and this season, and we'll talk to you soon.